All right, Scott, I'm going to count us into the audio in three, two, one.
All right, welcome to episode 129 of the Narcissistic Music Disorder.
Good afternoon, Scott. And this is a special day for you and I, of course, because we have a guest. Is that correct?
We do. Um, Coming from Los Angeles today via Bordeaux, France, we have Sacha Chaban. So, bienvenue, Sacha.
Merci beaucoup. Hi, it's my pleasure to be here. I love your French. Beautiful accent.
Thank you. So, we have something in common with Sasha, John. Two things right off the bat.
Okay,
All of us love music,
true.
and all three of us love Michael Kreppel.
Yes, yes. I'm a big Michael Kreppel fan, and actually, Sasha and I also have another thing in common, and that is the film On Fire.
Yes,
So
John played on the guitar on that.
I played and co-wrote the song that Michael submitted for the closing credits of that film, um, called "Ashes and Bones." So yes, we have a lot in common, and since we all love music, could you, Scott? Can you, or even Sasha, if you wouldn't mind, kind of tell us what you do professionally?
Of course, of course. Well, first of all, I didn't know you actually wrote that song. Like, it's a surprise. I love that song. That's so
Thank you.
congratulations, amazing. And we do have Michael in common as we work quite a lot. Michael is a recording mixer on many of the film I score. So personally, so I started my career in France in classical music. I was writing for live orchestra. I wrote for electronic music, electroacoustic. I had bands. I had like many direction in music. And when I moved to LA, I started working in films. That was my goal actually to score films my entire life. So I worked towards that, and I did started my professional career here as an orchestrator, and moved on to lead composer, and yeah, so that was a good example. On Fire, for example, have done several films with Peter Facinelli, who directed that film. We did Breaking and Exiting. We did The Vanished. Um, yeah, so that's what I do, composers.
So when you're composing for film, right? As you're writing a composition, I assume, and forgive me if this is not the case, but I assume as you're building not just the composition but the instrumentation as well, you're looking to kind of elicit a certain emotion, right? You know how you want the viewer to feel or what's happening in the. I assume you're writing these pieces. Do you write them specifically, like you'll get maybe a rough cut of what you're writing to and you'll write to the scene, or will you have the composition pre-written and then you'll find one of your compositions that enforces that scene or reinforces that scene?
Yeah.
So I always write to the picture. I rarely do it from the script. For one reason is composers used to start during the script, like decades ago. Nowadays, movies tend to have immersive score. So to have immersive score, you need to really have a picture and go with the flow of a scene. Like, for example, you have someone that is walking on the street. You would take the tempo of that person walking.
Oh yeah, okay.
So, you know, but that's more of like an immersive, like technical aspect of it. Though I don't score for what I'm seeing. I'm scoring for what the story is.
Gotcha.
That's very important. Like the music for film is not just a music for background. It's literally uh, telling you a story, and it can be sometimes, if it's a love story, of course, it's going to be love music. But if we go, for example, in some sort of thriller where you don't want to lead people into the actual killer or something, you would actually put some nice music on that killer the entire film. Nobody would actually have a clue that this guy is a killer. And then that's how you can actually play with the mind of the audience. That's one example. So yeah, music has like different um, responsibility in the film, but yeah, mostly it's just to bring that emotions and everything that you don't see on screen. Like again, they're more important.
And
Sasha, do
sorry,
you
Scott.
only compose, or do you actually sometimes pick the songs that are in movies, like on soundtracks for, because you worked on, I know, Guardians of the Galaxy.
So well, like it truly depends on the film.
Okay,
So Guardians of the Galaxy 2, for example, I was not responsible at all on that aspect. I was orchestrating, and and
orchestrating.
even like as a lead composer, depend it really depend on my relationship with with a studio, with the director. So sometimes I give advice,
Okay,
sometimes not. It really depends on the relationship. Um, and sometimes they just have songs in mind already even before shooting.
okay,
So it really depends on each film. But yeah, it happened. It happened, and sometimes I actually do compose the soundtrack. So they need songs, and for any reason they want like something custom for the film. For example, like my best example is like Rocky. They wanted a song that goes with the film, so they went to see, Survivor to compose
yep,
like Eye of the Tiger.
Right.
So that's that's specific, and sometimes I do it, and some other times I just, push people to go see that type of like artist to get licenses.
And when you're composing, and we just, as we were just talking, you're looking to either, like you said, your example of someone walking, and you're setting the tempo to kind of that that motion, right? To reinforce that motion or what's happening. Do you find yourself gravitating toward, do you find certain instruments elicit certain responses, like, and I'm really kind of simplifying this, but like, do you find the more long bowed violins bring out a certain emotion versus, you know, I don't know, versus an electric guitar piece, or even something that maybe is a little more deeply orchestrated? Do you pick instruments that you feel, do you have instrumentation that you gravitate toward that in the past has elicited certain responses for you or matched up with certain emotion for you?
So absolutely. So whenever you play with instrumentation, you touch a domain called psychoacoustic. So if, for example, I give you uh, like a solo trumpet and snare, that most likely will remind you of military.
Right. Yeah.
Uh, that kind of feeling, like you have
Great.
certain instrument are going specifically for Christmas songs, like yeah, you can really go towards that. Uh, Also, what I do is I custom make my own instrument for each field.
Gotcha.
And so I usually go on set, record song on set. And then I have my programmer who will then do like a VST for me with those songs. And
Okay.
then, yeah, it creates a personality, and
Cool.
that's what I'm doing.
Cool. So today I am, and Scott, I hope I have the assignment right. We're talking about some specific songs from scenes in movies, correct? That we kind
yes.
of have remembered or gravitated toward or have
That move
etched.
them along or make them memorable or whatever the song does to you. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Well, then let's hop into this thing because I'm excited to share some of my picks with two people as educated as you both are on the topic. Who wants to start us off?
John,
Scott, you want to start us off? You want our guest to start us
sure.
off? Go ahead, Scott.
So this is a very memorable scene. We all know this one. It's Moving in Stereo by the Cars and the famous red bikini scene in Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Fantastic. That is iconic.
I love it.
And there you go. The movie Fast Times at Ridgemont High, too, I think you would both agree is real music driven, right? It's the
Yes.
culture, teenage culture at the time, a lot of contemporary music of the time. And of course, that scene of Phoebe Cates coming out of the water, right? With
Yes.
that moving in stereo. Just great. Yeah. That's an iconic scene. We would all agree on that.
Yeah, you can't.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you've seen that movie, you can't not think of that scene every time that song comes on.
Right.
Yeah, it's so
It's
important.
Sasha, what's your first pick?
Well, I actually so you asked me to pick like five pretty much. So the five that I have are in different genre.
Sure.
The first one I want to say is since I'm a composer myself, I have the experience of like my music is sounds always better when filmmakers are actually giving me notes on because I'm specialized in music. I know every theory you can think of. I know all of this. Though the most unexpected ideas are usually coming from filmmakers that have no idea about music.
Right.
And so I don't know how this music has been made, but like one song that come to my mind about like completely unexpected is Ghostbusters.
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
And that music would have never seen the day of light if the movie wasn't here. It's such a
Right.
crazy song. From the harmony, the texture, like and it's whoever like write a song about ghosts. Like you know what I
Right.
mean? It's like the kind of like ideas you would never come up with without like filmmakers. So it's that's an example, but obviously you have thousands of examples, like from like as I said, like Eye of the Tiger and all of these like songs wrote for a movie have like a different idea at first, and then the songwriter would work on it. Probably they're gonna have notes on it, and I love that it sounds something that is basic, but it's not basic. It's really something that would have never seen the day of light without the film behind.
And wouldn't you say too, as a songwriter, I think Ghostbusters is a great example of first of all, Ray Parker Jr.'s talent, right? One of the directions he was given was the song had to say Ghostbusters. Now imagine writing a song that had to say Ghostbusters, right? I mean,
That's crazy. Yeah.
it's insane. And then to and I don't remember the time frame he had to deliver this thing, but it was short. They were getting ready to start promoting the film. As a matter of fact, he's told the story that he was having lunch out on the Sunset Strip and he saw the sign started to get painted, right? The Ghostbuster sign. He said he saw black and then the little red thing, and they were adding to it every day. And the genius of, and that's old time songwriting too. That's Tin Pan Alley. That's kind of classic songwriting where you can write with a purpose like that and be so specific that you go, hey, the song's got to say Ghostbusters. And then the big thing is when you can take the song and separate it from the movie and it still stands on its own, right?
Absolutely.
Ghostbusters is a hit song. It's a hit
Yeah.
song.
It
you
was.
And I remember hearing someone say, it's important to have a number one song, but it's more important to have a classic song. And Ghostbusters is a classic song. We all know it. We know the structure of it, a lot of the words. It's got all those hooks we look for as writers and even as listeners of music. It's got anyone can go Ghostbusters, right? It's as good as We Will Rock You, really. Those things that are hooks, but yet they're hooks and they stick in the mind. And yeah, what a great song. And
Absolutely.
and there you go. I think the story was Ray Parker Jr. is going to quit writing. He was going to go back to Detroit, quit songwriting and go back to Detroit. And this was
Wow.
the last thing he wrote before he literally told like the director of that film, hey man, I don't know about doing this. I think I'm going back to Detroit. Things aren't going the way I wanted. And the catch was the director said if they didn't like the song, Ray Parker Jr. could keep it. So he was like, well, even if it tanks, if the filmmaker doesn't like it, I'll have this song that maybe I can do something with down the road or whatever. So yeah, genius. My first pick, it's odd that this is actually from a film that's based around music and a musician. It's from the film La Bamba, which is the story of Richie Valens, but it's the song Sleepwalk from Santo and Johnny. And it plays over the scene where the radio announces the death of Richie Valens.
His
And
mom is
Richie's mom is
outside.
hanging laundry
Yeah.
outside, and Bob is there. And, the brother Bob comes and holds the mom while she's bawling and saying the classic line, not my Richie, over and over again. And then Sleepwalk is playing in the background, that classic lap steel line that we all know. And it's just, it's so emotional. It's an instrumental, right? It's an instrumental. Yeah. It was not written for the film, but as far as music placement goes, one of the most genius. That song moves at a scene with very little dialogue. Really, all that's happening is mom's crying and saying, not my Richie. And yet it just, it's so connected to that emotion of loss. Yeah. I don't know why. Probably because the lap steel part is that instrument mimics, it cries because it's the pitches are liquid, right? Like a wailing mourning mother might do. So yeah, that's my first pick, Sleepwalk from La Bamba. What do you got next, Scott?
I have from the movie The Crow. Robert Smith specifically wrote this song for the movie called Burn, and it plays during when Brandon Lee is putting on his makeup the first time he becomes the Crow. And it's an amazing song. I don't know if it's on a record besides like maybe a greatest hits or the sound, but it's on the Crow soundtrack, which is phenomenal. So yeah, Burn by the Crow is just a great movie. Brandon Lee's final movie, unfortunately, but yeah, just a classic.
Is that credited to Robert Smith as a
The
solo
Cure,
artist?
yeah.
The Cure. Okay.
Yeah, but Robert Smith wrote it for that movie.
Right. Again, which is a testament to, real, that high level songwriting. I call it, songwriting to order. Someone gives you specific direction and you write, like
I think
the things we're talking about.
I think the story I remember, and Sacha will probably can relate to this, is he got some like dailies that he got to watch and then wrote the song from seeing those.
And is that common, Sacha, is you will be watching dailies as you go or rough cuts of the film as you're writing?
Yeah, you see the entire film usually, first cut, and then they just change it, almost every, I would say 3-4 days. It's a usual thing.
Yeah, what do they say in Hollywood? The first draft of everything sucks.
Well, actually, it sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's excellent. Sometimes you have you never know. Sometimes actually it happened to me where it starts well and then it goes wrong and then it goes back well. Like you never know. Like that's because what I like about that is that they depending on the film, sometimes they do have some test screening. So you have an audience there and then watching the film and then they would give notes. So sometimes, it can change on direction to another. And then, it really depends. You just try the best, what works the best for you and for the audience. And my role here though is to make sure it goes smoothly because sometimes it can be a catastrophe. They can change the film like a week before the actual delivery, and then the whole music is done, and then you need to change the entire, places of music, how it plays, how it's actually songs. Even songs. Sometimes I write the music compared to a song, and then they don't have a license. And so, but my music has been made a way that it goes well with the next song or the previous song in terms of harmony, in terms of tempo, in terms of so it goes smoothly, and then that can change as well. I mean, yeah, it always changed till the last minute, and you need to be ready, you know.
Are you typically composing stuff in your own studio using MIDI and keyboards, things of that nature? Is that your basic working model for this?
Yeah, like it's a cool thing to be able to actually show the director how it will sound with the live orchestra before it does. Um, if you go back to the John Williams era with every composer around it, and even before, like those composers would actually show sketch on the piano, and
Okay.
then the filmmakers would actually sit with the orchestra at the day of a live orchestra
Oh,
recording.
wow. Wow.
Which, and you know how it can change from piano to live orchestra. It's not the same music almost.
Sure.
So, and it happened several times where actually, you know, the studios or like the director are not liking the music at the live orchestra session, and composer get fired on right there, and then
On day
like
of. Wow.
yeah, like
Wow.
it's so I mean, you know, so you have some legend like John Williams, never happened to him, you know, but yeah, so it's pretty cool to have all that MIDI.
Right.
Though what I'm seeing more and more about people that start that begin their career is that nowadays with technology and DAW, like the software you use to make music, they have a tendency of working with loops a lot. And I'm not even talking actual loops. I'm talking like writing in loop sequence. And because
Sure.
it's easier, they're going to
Yep.
have this rhythmic session and they just move it this way. What I started with actually pen and paper my entire career before even knowing how, but we can even music edit like and do all of these things and score, you know, writing on score sheet and you know,
Oh, wow.
so and the cool thing about pen and paper is that you can actually see right in front of you that you're doing something too loopy,
Right.
something that you
Right.
cannot see on the software. Like
Right.
if you see that it's like literally the same figure on the paper, you would not even have this idea. So the music used to be extremely organic. If you hear, or if you, I mean, if you listen any John Williams, Alan Silvestri, Jerry Goldsmith, all of these people, like their music is extremely organic. Every second is different from the previous one.
Mm-hmm.
Every single second.
Right.
And nowadays you can take some music from beginning to the end, and then you click on the first second, and the last second is almost the same music.
Right. It's a cut and
Uh,
paste kind of world, right? Where you're
exactly.
getting your 4 bars that feel good, and
Yeah,
you're just cutting and pasting that down the road. And I've also
exactly.
noticed too, and maybe you've noticed this, because of MIDI and because of the ability to create so much music at your computer, sometimes you get composers who are composing things that they sound foreign because they're not possible in the real world, right? You know,
No.
you have sequences that the changes are, you couldn't get that on you couldn't do it physically on a viola or something. You just have these movements that are not. We used to do it back in the day with MIDI drums, right? You'd write a drum fill and then you'd realize that you would need 6 hands to play it.
That's
You'd
true.
need.
That's true.
So yeah, that idea of the stuff being organic is definitely what sets apart the classic, right? The classic scores from maybe some of the more modern scores is that
Absolutely.
organic nature and how musical they are.
Yeah.
What's your next pick, Sacha?
Uh, actually, so I'm going. I did films. Now I'm going to animation, and I have to say the songs in animation film are pretty incredible, especially like the classic Disney. And I cannot not mention, for example, Aladdin.
Oh yeah.
Why I'm picking Aladdin is this is the craziest aspect of animation because they set the music in. So, for example, if you hear the music Prince Ali, whenever you know Aladdin is coming as a prince to see the princess, if you watch the actual animation, and if you listen to the music, every single note has an importance, has in truly importance into the storytelling. And what I like also is that you know that the music is coming from somewhere in the Middle East, but it's not specific. You cannot tell this is from that country, that country, that country. You know, I know. So Aladdin is a actual Persian fairy tale. From and they didn't use like Persian things, and then even like the animation itself, you don't really know like where it's coming from. It's like more Arabic trait to it, even though it's like a Persian story. But that thing of like not using traditional instrument, traditional way, but at the same time you feel that it's like coming from this word is pretty clever. And you have this balance of like it's a fairy tale around there, but like not specifically, and that gives less like realism, which is good for an animation. I think that that whole and everybody can can actually identify like to that. I really like that thing about any Disney film actually. Like you somehow you identify as a lion. You identify as whatever, like Jungle Book, like you like
Right.
it's
Yeah.
some crazy thing, but you identify because the music is written in a way of a very well balance of a fairy tale, and the emotion that you can get from it is like you can genuinely have it as an American, as a French, as a Japanese, as anybody in the world can actually identify and get emotional with that music. Uh, it's an incredible tool. The other person that does that very well is Michael Jackson. That,
Oh yeah.
if you're in any tribe, knows Michael Jackson somehow. His music is very universal. Compared to, for example, if you take some extremely traditional music in a country and then the next country close to it, or even the village, to another village, they would not understand that music. They would not get emotional with us because they are too far away culturally or something. And somehow Disney has made like a very incredible formula to do music universally,
Hmm.
in my opinion. Like I see
Yeah.
fans of,
Sure. Yeah.
everywhere. So
Yeah.
it's a pretty crazy. And then storytelling wise, that music is really brilliant. Like if you watch scene by scene that Prince Ali thing, it's incredible how it works well with a story. It's every without being too uh with being like subtle at the same time. So
Yeah.
it's kind of I
It
love that balance. I love that
it
universality.
moves the scene along and is emotional without being too heavy-handed.
Exactly.
Well, and that's probably why so many of those Disney features translate so well to the stage and to musical theater because they are so strong. The material and the songs in these Disney films are so not just universal, but also um elicit emotion, right? From the
Yeah.
viewer and connect. And I kind of like the example too that you gave, Sasha, of Michael Jackson, is trying to identify um what about Michael Jackson's music was so, because we can all agree Michael Jackson a worldwide phenomenon, right? All cultures, all languages. He was just, and my guess is it has something to do with Michael Jackson's ability to elicit emotion, just chord structurally. um Certainly his melodies are, even if you don't speak the language, it's not your native tongue, the melodies of those songs are so brilliant that I think anybody can latch onto them and make that emotional connection. And I like that about Michael Jackson too. Um, my next pick, this is a classic scene. Everybody remembers it. It's from K Billy's Super Sounds of the
Yeah.
70s. It's Stuck in the Middle by Steeler's Wheel and Reservoir Dogs. It's that classic scene where the ear scene, as we
Mr.
call it.
Blonde.
Right. And I mean, that song again is as soon as you hear those opening chords of Stuck
Yeah.
in the Middle, you can see that dance, right? You see the dancing scene. You can hear, the thing I always liked too was the DJ on the radio is the comedian Stephen Wright.
Stephen
That's
Wright, yep.
the voice. And that's always been a classic scene to me too. And Steelers Wheel, obviously that song had existed prior to, but it took someone like, like Sacha or someone who picks music to pair the scene and the song so brilliantly, to have that, there's something, the juxtaposition of the horror that's about to happen and the dancing, right? It's like,
Yeah.
how can this person be delivering such horror whilst lightly dancing to this melody?
Yeah,
it's
the
just,
music supervisor, whoever picks out songs for Tarantino movies, does just a brilliant job.
and I wonder who that is, and I wonder if how much Quentin Tarantino had. I mean, because think about Miserlou and the surfy stuff that now
He's a big fan of that himself. Yeah.
right. Yeah, and that really, to me, if you hear one of those reverby guitar surf instrumental tunes, you sort of can picture Tarantino films almost now. So he's actually taken that genre and it's connected to his genre now, which is an interesting thing to do. So what do you got next, Scott?
The opening scene from the movie that inspired this podcast, High Fidelity. The song is "You're Gonna Miss Me" by the 13th Floor Elevators.
Brilliant. And that's another music movie, right? I mean, High
Yes.
Fidelity is a music.
I mean, he's blasting that while shouting out the window to his girlfriend and just.
and let me ask you this, Sacha. If a movie is, very specific, I don't know, it's not a musical, but a movie that relies really heavy on music, and I'll use that Fast Times at Ridgemont High as an example, that really relied on the music of the era. Is there ever a film that maybe, you see a daily or you're working on and they ask you for a specific style of work? Like, I would like this to be John Williams-esque, or I would like it to be Disney-like. Do you get direction like that ever?
It happened quite a lot, actually. I would say many of the film I do, and any composers actually do, they give you a reference track.
Okay.
So that's what we call temporary music. And so they can put, like, I don't know, John Williams, Hans Zimmer, whatever, on a scene.
Yep.
The big mistake of composers that start their career here is they usually tend to copy the music. They try to copy the music, saying like, "Oh my God, that's like what the directors want, or that's what the studio wants." Actually, it's not. A music, when they play some music, you need to find out why they specifically chose that music to the scene.
Right.
And it's not about instrumentation usually. It's not about the style of the music. It's about the storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
So if you understand why they put this emotion, you can actually do something completely opposite in terms of instrumentation or style or whatever genre of writing, but you just copy the emotion. Just copy whatever it needs to be transmitting. So, because if at the end of the day, if someone is hiring you, it's for your music.
Right.
So you need to still have your music and create something that they like, emotional and storytelling wise. Very, very important. And you can tell so many things.
And also something that speaks to your personality, right? Your style, what you do, because, I've thought about this as a guitar player. Like, when someone hires you to play guitar on something of theirs, they're hiring you for what you do. They want something that sounds like you, not something that sounds like, Eric Clapton or whatever.
Yeah.
So for you, these filmmakers want to hear Sacha's personality and tastes and history come out in this, while you're kind of connecting to that emotional need of the scene.
Yeah.
Which is what certainly great writers always do. What's your next pick, Sacha?
Next pick is in the musical actually. Obviously, we're talking songs. So for me, the greatest musical is the Blues Brothers.
Oh,
And I'm gonna say, well, like that. I mean, the Blues Brothers is the only musical that everybody, including people that hates musicals, love.
right.
Like
Yes.
I don't have any other example. I genuinely have no other example of a film that people who doesn't like musicals, like everybody does with Blues Brothers.
And you know, I wonder if it's because the Blues Brothers somehow, you know, they were somehow a musical that you were connected to it by the time you went, wait a second, this is a musical, right?
Yeah.
Like you were
That's
already
it. Yeah.
You're already
invested.
in.
Yeah, you were already in. And I mean, I don't know what to say about the Blues Brothers other than it was for folks like me, it was a great exposure to great artists that I did, you know, at my age back then when that came out, there was no way I was familiar with Cab Calloway or you know, certainly there was some Aretha Franklin in my life because of my mother and but you had these iconic artists. You had Cab Calloway and Ray Charles and Aretha Franklin and John Lee
Duck
Hooker,
Dunn.
yeah, and Booker T and the MGs. And the funny thing about that is the Blues Brothers band they're playing other artists' material, you know, but yet the movie is so great that a lot of the general public now would call those Blues Brothers songs, right?
Yeah.
They would go, "Oh, well, that's a Blues Brothers song."
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Um,
true.
and yeah, that's a great film with great music, and I mean that's such a staple. Scott, do you have any idea what year Blues Brothers came out, or Sasha?
Was it 1980? Somewhere in there? Or was it earlier than that?
I was thinking 80.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in here you are in 1980, right? The tail end of the disco era. And you have this film that's a very popular major motion picture that's exposing our audiences to classic blues and R&B artists.
Yeah.
Um, you know, my love, and I have a lifelong love of Cab Calloway. Um, for no other reason than how much I liked his version of Minnie the Moocher in the Blues Brothers.
Yeah.
And then I was a lifer. So yeah, great pick, great movie. My next pick is from the another music movie. I'm afraid, a fictional movie. Well, loosely fiction, Almost Famous, and
Yes.
it's the bus scene where after they've gotten him off the roof, right, and they're
When
all
he
on
was
the
a golden
bus,
god. Yeah.
right, and everybody's quiet and sullen. Um, Tiny Dancer starts by
Yes.
Elton John on the bus. And by the end of it, they're all singing it, right? In this scene, they've gone from this pressured, quiet, tense, and they're almost, you know, they're all in their separate seats and no one's
Yep.
talking. And this thing has happened. And you can sense this rift in their band. And then Tiny Dancer comes on. And by the chorus, they've all united and they're singing it together.
Yes.
And and there's emotion in that scene, right? That
There is.
this song has superseded all the negative emotional stuff that's happened and has collectively brought them back together on this bus ride to the next gig or whatever. So
Yeah.
yeah, Tiny Dancer by Elton John. And again, Elton John and Bernie Taupin are, I mean, these are old style songwriters, you know, old style in the sense that and I don't mean older is better. I don't mean that at all. But there was a time when the craft of songwriting was very important. The craft of what happened and everything from how you know, it started for me popular music wise, but for me it started with the Beatles and being able to hear that they were taking that pop structure, that chord structure, the 1-4-5 chord structure, and they'd put this middle eight in that was another thing, another composition, you know. And oftentimes it was, you know, the two of them, John and Paul, maybe would merge a couple songs together, but that's the kind of songwriting that I think is really is an art. It's an art just like filmmaking or visual arts, whatever. I think that level of songwriting is an art as well. What do you got next, Scott?
Speaking of art, we're gonna go to the movie Dumb and Dumber. With the
High art.
snowman scene and the song "If You Don't Love Me, I'll Kill Myself" by Pete Droge and the Sinners.
That's great.
Oh,
Did Pete, was it Pete Droge that had, maybe it was Dumb and Dumber. Maybe that's the movie I'm thinking of. That was his big single, right?
Yeah, from that first record that was not on the Necktie Second.
Okay. Yeah. I
That
thought he had a film and song in the movie Benny and June too.
he might have,
And for some reason I feel
but
like it.
that scene with Jeff Daniels and they're making the snowman and he throws the snowball at her face. just
Right. Right. Right.
just
Beautiful.
iconic. And yeah, Pete Droge, that was cool to, know him at the time. Not know him, but be a fan of him. And then like, hey, Pete Droge is in this
Yeah.
mainstream movie.
Yeah. Which is huge for people like us with NMD when we hear one of our little niche artists pop up in a film or something. It's always like a big win for us, right? Like
Yeah.
it's getting out there. What do you have next, Sasha?
I would say let's go to TV series. One TV series that is, I mean, my generation is Highlander,
Yes.
and I mean, Princess of a Universe by Queen.
Princess of the Universe by Queen.
What an incredible song. Um, you know, they first refused it, if I recall it, and then they read the script and then they actually worked on it. I think this is a kind of like crazy opportunity. Like you have the biggest band, one of the biggest band ever,
Right.
you know, writing a theme song for your show. That's pretty rare, you know.
Very
That's
rare.
pretty rare, and and the song is amazing. I mean, it's kind of
It
like
is.
My next pick is you know what, I'm gonna do this one. This is my second to last one. I have the Simple Minds tune, Don't You Forget About Me, from the Breakfast Club. Again,
Oh man.
that collection of teen movies around that time were real music driven things, usually contemporary music driven things. And that's the classic, right? I mean, we can all hear that. And it's a great song too. It's a that's the thing about these songs too that I really like is they're not reliant on the film. They stand on their
Yes.
own. Like I don't need to see that scene to know, to get the emotional appeal of that song. And I was,
Exactly.
they live on their own, and both of them enhance one another. I think, the film enhances a song and vice versa. What do you got next, Scott?
My last one is from my all-time favorite movie, and it is "Lollipop" by the Chordettes
I love that song.
while they're walking down the train tracks in "Stand by Me."
Beautiful.
It's such
Beautiful.
an innocent scene, and yeah, just the conversations that they're having. I think if I remember right, like Corey Feldman's character and Vern, they're talking about like if Mighty Mouse and Superman who would win a fight.
Right.
And the other two guys are talking about like if I remember right, like Chris getting accused of stealing the milk money or something. Something that's they shouldn't be talking about when they're 12.
Right.
So I don't know, that movie, just the music fit the scenes so well, and that one is just so memorable when they're walking down the tracks at the start of their journey there.
And you know why I think that is, and I don't pretend to be deep enough to understand all of this, but the thing I think is that Lollipop is such a simple, pure song, right?
Yeah.
It's pure joy. It's bubble gum, right? But yet they're walking down these tracks toward this darkness, right? They're going
Yeah.
to, so it's that again, you can feel the lightness because they're just kids walking down the tracks, singing along, but there's all this heaviness around it too. So that gives you a complexity of emotion in that scene that you're not even aware of yet. You know what I mean? Sasha, what do you got next?
So just talking about trailers a little bit, there is this big trend right now, which is actually put song and make a trailer cover of a song. And just a shout out to one of the like biggest company and artist that that does that is Way, written to WEI, and they do cover like really crazy, like Toxic from Britney Spears, like Gangsta Paradise, like they did Boom Boom, like so many different songs, and you know you see it on trailers. Like I would always recommend everybody to go and listen to trailer cover of songs, you know, and I think it's you know, I think it's a cool thing, you know, to hear that. Another example of cover is like Nothing Else Matter. I don't remember who did the cover, but it's like this
Oh, the
female.
British Sam Fender.
I don't remember. Like they did a cover on Californication.
Oh, okay.
At this scene, like I forgot about that, but like that beautiful cover as well. Cover or amazing. Because you get that nostalgia of something that you know and you love, and you just like you just hear it in a different way, and it's really a cool sensation, whatever it's like trailer or like even for films. It's you know, when we were talking about psychoacoustic on instruments, that's kind of the same thing, um doing a cover on any film or trailer. So yeah, like it's a beautiful tool.
Yeah, you know, talking about that, and this wasn't on my list, but there's the in the Big Lebowski, it's the scene where Jesus is bowling and they have the Spanish version of Hotel California
Yeah,
playing in the
yeah,
background, you know,
Oh,
beautiful. What a great,
love
you know,
it. Yeah,
and it's a great cover. I mean, it's brilliant.
yeah,
It's very cool, and yet, you know, there's the Spanish version where, you know, it's just a great connection of like you said, a great cover. My last pick is this is really important to me. In college, we had to pick a film, and like for an entire semester, all we did was write and review and dissect a film. My film back then was Spike Lee's "Do the Right Thing," and the song I picked was "Fight the Power" by Public Enemy, that plays every time Radio Raheem is on screen with his boombox. He's playing "Fight the Power" by Public Enemy, which is constantly, you know, the message of that song with the film, with what's going on, is constantly reinforcing this plight and this struggle. And the one of the best scenes of it is when early in the film, maybe in the opening minutes, I believe it is, where Radio Raheem comes across Mookie, who's delivering a pizza, and he turns his radio off. He walks up to Mookie and it's playing "Fight the Power," and he stops it to talk to Mookie and describe his two new knuckle rings. One says love, one says hate. He goes through this whole monologue about love versus hate. Um, Mookie moves on to deliver the pizza. Radio Raheem's going down to the corner to get a slice, and he hits play again, and he's walking through the neighborhood with "Fight the Power" playing on his boombox, and he's basically establishing his view on the world, right? How he sees the world is this boombox telling him he's in a fight against all these things, cultural things, racial things, whatever. And it's "Fight the Power" by Public Enemy. And again, that is a politically driven song, is an emotional song, and is it just really establishes the feel and the theme of that movie. And Radio Raheem, of course, I'm sure it's not a spoiler nowadays, you know, ultimately loses his life in this struggle of not just fight the power, but of love and hate,
yeah.
where hate wins. So yeah, that was my last pick.
Awesome.
Well, that was you know, that this has been so educational, man. Sacha, thank you for coming. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you for the
sharing your
invite.
time with us. And for what you do, just for us as fans of film. There are times when and I'm sorry if I'm speaking for you, Scott, but where we are moved during films and we're not
yeah.
even sure. I mean, we know what's happening and we know the emotional content, but there are times we're moved in a way where we go, why am I reacting so dramatically to this thing? And it's the music, right?
Yeah.
It's those things. It's the psychoacoustic things that are happening to us, right?
Absolutely. Music
Yeah,
is key on many level.
it's
It just
absolutely.
gives you a key to the emotional emotion of like the character, the situation, everything. It's a very by the way, little thing, but they, after movies were silent, the use obviously music and stuff, but they actually thought about right after they thought about should we keep the music or not? Because now we
Right.
have dialogues. That was an actual question in the movie
Wow.
industry. So I'm
Wow.
very glad actually they kept it because they
Yeah.
thought the music was actually something very important to connect the character to you.
And they have obviously saw that, right? They obviously sensed that. They knew it. They were seeing. I mean, again, it's just it's funny for me because music is my thing. It's my number one. But yet I always say the best songs play like a film. They're written like a film, right?
Absolutely.
I always say that about the best albums and the best songs. I go, man, this is like a mini movie.
Yep.
It takes me places. And oddly enough, in the actual film genre, it's music that's helping create those emotions too. So it's truly one of those universal things. So yes, we cannot thank you enough for being here. Thank you so much for
My
again
pleasure.
for your insight, and to have someone of your talent and your wealth of knowledge share time with us on something so important is really just a blessing. So thanks again. Scott, what can you leave us with today?
Sacha, thank you. And promote anything that you have. I know you have a series on Netflix that's out or coming out called Polo that you do music
Yeah, it's
for.
coming out. Well, actually, talking about song, I have done many songs for it. It's called Polo. I'm myself a polo player. That's my hobby.
Oh, cool.
And so Netflix has this series produced by executive produced by Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, and
Wow.
showrunner is Miloš Barak, and it's an incredible docu-series with all the best polo players on the planet. 5 episodes. It's coming out December 10th. I've done score, meaning like with orchestra and actually a hybrid between orchestra and hip hop. Many
Wow.
like electronic music, many pop music, many songs, with different singers, and it's a really cool show. And in December as well, I have another Netflix film called The City of Gold, feature film. We don't know the exact date yet, but it's gonna come out on December as well. So yeah, stay tuned on that. It's going to be a too cool.
Yeah,
Well,
we'll be looking for it.
we will have links to your website and your information, Sacha. So merci beaucoup. Thank you for joining
Merci
us
à vous.
today on the narcissistic music disorder. We can't thank you enough.
Thank you.
All right, Scott, you got anything for us closing out today?
Nope. I just
Nothing.
want to thank Sacha for
Excellent.
joining us.
Yeah.
Thanks to
This
you
has
guys.
been
It was so enjoyable.
Thank
this
you
has been
so
a
much.
treat.
All right, we'll see everybody later. God
See
bless.
you
Thank
later,
you.
everybody.